ಎಲ್ರಿಗೂ ನಮಸ್ಕಾರ. Mr. Sudesh Pai, Mr. Gursharan, and other senior citizens and young friends. Well, after listening to the eloquent speech of Mr. Sudesh Pai on the Constitution and its principles, both theoretical principles and what should be done in practice, I think there is a very little for me to say. Nevertheless, just a few words. In the first place, let me congratulate all those who participated.
So just keep it a little aloft.
Keep it?
No, aloft.
Okay. Oh, I shouldn't touch a matter. All right. All the states who participated in this PAI effort, and of course the winners, I find Haryana among large states and Sikkim among the smaller states have been the winners this time. I think a pleasant departure from what was happening the previous years. I used to find it was mainly Kerala number one and Tamil Nadu number two, and say most of the southern states dominating. So it's good. I mean, that's that way. Let me congratulate them once again. I would also like to congratulate our director, Mr. Gursharan, and his team, particularly, I think, Nidhi and Anjan, who made the presentations. I think they worked very hard and they deserve a round of applause. Well, so far as the theme of the PAI 2022 is concerned, much has already been said. For the first time, I find that, we have made a departure again from the themes that we were dealing with in the previous years and focused our attention on the Constitution. I think very rightly so, and perhaps it's very timely if you look at what is really happening across the country. I think the constitutional principles must need to be not only reiterated but reasserted in a very firmer tone. Well, we heard a lot about justice, whether it is economic, social, political, and so on. And the core principles behind them, liberty, equality, fraternity. But I think the guiding principles for all these comes from the directive principles of state policy, which in a way narrate what exactly needs to be done if we are to become a welfare state. But rightly or wrongly, they are not enforceable in courts. In a way, it is good because I think the people also need to take some responsibility about following the principles laid down in the Constitution and trying to realize their goals. But the question is, how far have we succeeded? It is one thing to talk about the glorious principles enshrined in the Constitution, which we keep, as I said, reiterating now and then. So this PAI report gives an assessment of how different states have done and assign different ranks. That is okay. But if you look at the overall performance in the broad constitutional goal of securing justice in different sectors, in a federal democracy, I think Mr. Pai expanded on that. When you speak about the Constitution, the role of the center also becomes very important. And that, of course, because the mandate was not to include evaluation of the central schemes and things like that. But we need to look at it in a total context because the center influences the states in several ways. Federalism, I think fiscal federalism was mentioned. It's not only fiscal, political, administrative, the relationship between center and the states. And we know nowadays hear that there is more and more of centralization through various means. I'll not go into the details. I think you know all that. And also find that the political discourse has somewhat turned confrontational in a sense, instead of in earlier, it used to be a little more refined in the earlier days. But now, even between the states and the center, if it is, especially if the in the states, we find the parties are different, ruling parties are different. It is always a confrontation, whether it is West Bengal or Tamil Nadu or Kerala on one side, and Karnataka may be trying to figure out, they don't know what to say. So silence is the best answer there. It's okay. I mean, although people's voice is heard. I mean, you should not impose this, impose that, and so on and so forth. It is not only in the field of politics. I find this the issues that have arisen in the recent past. Even the judiciary is divided. If we look at the judgment on hijab, two-judge bench. Well, at this point, let me make Mr. Sudesh Pai is here. I don't know why two-judge benches are constituted. Because if two judges give different or dissenting opinions, there is no opinion. It has to go to the larger bench. It's referred to the larger bench or 5 or 7 if it is constitutional issue. It has to be 3 or 5 in more important cases so that you do get a verdict, as in the case of Ayodhya, for instance. I mean, that is just beside the point. I thought I'll just raise only one point because, see, that is the discourse on Indian democracy. Of course, Ms. Sudesh Pai rightly made the point that in spite of all the problems that we may have, as a democracy, India is a model of success. We have survived given the diversity of our population, the regional, the linguistic, religious, and we keep quarreling about them. But still, we have survived as a democracy. And among the developing countries, it is certainly a shining example. If you look at what is happening in neighboring countries or even in the so-called civilized countries, I think we try to learn democracy or the democratic principles from highly advanced democratic countries like the United States and the United Kingdom. We adopted in the constitution parliamentary form of democracy is from UK and separation of powers from the US and so on. But today, I think we have a lesson or two to teach those two countries in particular. Let me refer to in the United States, what happened at the end of the Trump presidency. I mean, a political party, people going and storming the parliament, the Capitol, which is considered the sacred. I mean, I always used to look upon the Capitol building. Oh, what a wonderful place. Not only to look at, but even inside deliberations and all that. But you see, fortunately, such a thing has never happened in India. And today, you look at what is happening in the UK. They seem to have, there seems to be no leader, or they don't know how to govern. And our governance is certainly better at the moment. And probably they tried to put a person of Indian origin there. There again, it failed. Maybe someday it will happen, and then people with Indian origin may be able to teach a lesson or two as to how to govern democracy, an ancient democracy, which originated Magna Carta and so on and so forth. There's no doubt about that. But what I really wanted to draw your attention was, so recently, I think, there's a ranking of countries on different things, of course, on developmental index, human development, economic growth, and so on and so forth. But some of these global watchdog institutions, they try to take on the task of assessing the place how democratic it is a country, and they downgraded India, as, in terms of democracy and human rights or whatever it is. And in order to rebut that, in the Ministry of External Affairs, there is a public policy and research division. So they brought out a paper or a document called India as a Democracy. I will not go into the detail except to say that it points to what is called the Indian way of democracy. And they've expanded on that. What is the Indian way and all that? Very briefly, it means they have said that India is a pluralistic society, number one. Two, intuitively an international society. And three, they have said, we have always gone by our own ideal of what is called Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. That is, we treat the whole world as one family. Well, this certainly grand principle. Yeah, we should certainly be proud of our civilization, of our culture, that all these values that we have inherited. But I think what is important is this, they've also said about this civilizational ethos. So, what is the civilizational ethos of India? Yeah, talking about all these, inherited virtues of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and things like that, it is all very well. But in practice, what is happening? As I said, more polarization, more confrontation. And it is not that the majority of the people appreciate it or are a party to it, no. But it is the political parties and maybe a minority or very, very microscopic minority of uh, the negative elements in society, as they may be called, they make use of this occasion. And therefore, I think on this occasion, especially after listening to Mr. Pai, I would say, I think the civilizational discourse, the political discourse, needs to acquire a more positive tone. And that is where maybe, I don't know, civil society has to play an important role. When the leaders fail, people have to act. That is the lesson of democracy. And it has happened in a number of countries. It happened in the US and many other countries also. I mean, whether in European countries like France, the French Revolution, and all that. So in India also it has happened. The movement, the JP movement at a particular point of time, and India against corruption. So they just shook the governments in power. So all this is required when, power goes to the heads. Mr. Pai quoted Lord Acton, and once Lord Acton also said, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is perhaps what has happened in one sense. And that has to be reversed. And as I said, quoting from Dr. Ambedkar, the Ambedkar himself was the chief architect of the Constitution. He said the success of the Constitution does not depend on the nature of the Constitution, the words, what is written, etc. It depends on how it works, how it is worked. So where the people have also a very important role to play. In one sense, yes, people of India have played a role, I would say. Otherwise, we could not have survived as a democracy like this. We have shown patience, we have shown anger at times. But I think the time has again come, I think, for kind of, as I said, first of all, to make corrections in the discourses, whether it is on democracy or on civilization. And there was a time when, I think it was in the early 1990s or 1989 and beyond that, after Soviet Russia collapsed. Francis Fukuyama, a great political scientist, American, he said this is the end of history. He wrote a book saying that is the end of history, which meant that it is the Western style of democracy and market capitalism that will be the future. That is going to be the successful model for all times. But as I said, even America itself has failed in that model, in implementing that model successfully. So I think today, it is very interesting, and we should be proud of it, that many countries in the world looks upon India as a leader on the international stage, and they're suggesting India should take the lead in trying to solve some disputes and problems, including the Russian-Ukraine war. I mean, it is a great recognition of the strength of Indian democracy, strength of Indian leadership, and so on. So let us derive inspiration from the good things that have happened. And I would again say, probably conclude by saying what Sudesh Bhai made a reference to, that in our assessment of the states is one thing, but when you speak about constitution, federalism, etc., the center comes into play. Maybe next year's Pai report should also bring in, at least I would say, the relations, the center-state relationships, how it's worked, how has federalism worked, whether it is federalism in the constitutional sense or cooperative federalism, as we are speaking these days. The central government itself, the Prime Minister spoke about cooperative federalism right in the beginning, 7 years ago. But how is it working? Is it cooperative or confrontationist? And what should really guide, what should be the guiding principles of, say, cooperative federalism? And both, there I think we need a more, it is a much more difficult exercise. It's not going to be easy, and you need to evolve different criteria for that, and things like that. But certainly, I'm certainly sure that PAC is capable of doing that, and we hope there will be a more interesting presentation and discussion when we present the PAI report 2023. With these few words, let me thank director and all the others, and thank all of you for responding to our invitation and having shown the patience to listen to all that has been said. I also see some old faces. Sita is here from PAC. She was one of the first ones to join, and of course she left, and then we are very happy to see her. And as Mr. Gurusharan said, very senior officers, it is good to see, and we would certainly look to them for more guidance and advice and how to do better. PAC has a mandate of promoting good governance, and we look forward to your own suggestions. As they say, and we speak about people's participation. So we would certainly like your participation in trying to make PAC a much, much better organization. Thank you.